to the UIAAA Connection podcast. GoFan and VNN are proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection. Now a combined company, GoFan and VNN provide a seamless integration for digital ticketing and athletic websites. Direct your fans to one place for all your athletic events, communications, and tickets to home and away games. Thank you to GoFan and VNN for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch Hunter. Today we have as our special guest, Trevor Howell, the Director of Athletics at Weber High School. Trevor, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Hutch.
Let's have you begin by sharing with our audience here in the United States and across the world, get to know you a little bit better, where you grew up, where you went to college, your first job, etc.
Yeah, I grew up here in North Ogden, grew up there my whole life. I actually attended Ben Lomond High School. My older brother, 3 years older, attended Weber High School. We lived just inside the boundaries. My father was a coach at Ben Lomond High School, coached baseball, basketball, and football. So I grew up there as a young kid in the dugout and on the bench and on the bus and all those kind of things. Gained some friends there and decided to want to go play there where my dad was at. My brother played here at Weber, football and baseball, and my dad didn't get to watch him play much. So anyhow, I decided to do that. And then my younger brother, 2 years younger than me, did the same thing. And my sister, the youngest, decided to go to Weber. So 2 Weber Warriors and 2 Ben Lomond Scots, but I'm not a Warrior.
And who is your dad?
Roger Howell.
Roger, and of course I know Roger, so I figured that I wanted you to make the connection.
34 years in Ogden School District, 28 at Ben Lomond, coached 3 sports forever and was an AD about the last 10 years there.
Perfect. So let's talk about what sports you were able to play when you were younger. Did you like just year round, just whatever was in season? Talk about that for a minute.
Absolutely. Well, I wish it was still like that. I mean, I played 3 sports in high school, so baseball, basketball, football, one each season, right? Summer we just kind of shared, and we'd go to weight training in the morning for football conditioning and so forth, and then we'd have some summer basketball games on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We played Legion baseball Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So my June and July was just sports. The other part of your question. Oh yeah. So as a younger kid, I played soccer as well. I actually enjoyed soccer up until about junior high, where you kind of had to make a decision with it conflicting with, football and baseball in the fall and the spring. So I kind of gave soccer up and focused on those other 3. And I did those 3 sports for 4 years at Ben Lomond High School. And it was a great experience.
And were you able to do quite a bit of Little League before you got to high school?
Absolutely. Yeah. We play, summer baseball. We play football. I started playing tackle football in, I think, 5th grade. My mom held out as long as she would or could, begged her to play. 2nd grade, 3rd grade. And my friends are playing. Finally, she let me play in 5th. So 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, played basketball. I remember as a junior high kid in 7th grade, some of we have sports in Weber School District. I attended North Ogden Junior High. They'd have red shirts, right? You could be on the team. The 9th graders weren't playing up at the high school, so I had a lot of 8th and 9th graders. We could be on the team, or practice with the team, but not play. So we played, rec ball and Bantam ball and AAU and church ball. It seemed like I played 4 or 5 teams in the winter, and then did more baseball in the spring as well. So did all those things. Rode our bikes to the park, our dirt bikes with our glove and our bat, played at the park, all those kinds of fun things that the kids these days don't know what that's about.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Obviously, because I knew your father, obviously, and he's closer to my age than he is obviously to your age.
Yeah.
And I just remember being a kid just playing. I mean, sports, but if it wasn't organized, you were just out. I mean, you didn't come home in the summer until it was dark.
No, one of my favorite books is the Matheny Manifesto. I don't know if you've read that one. Mike Matheny, the former player and manager for the Cardinals. And he talks about that in his book, playing wiffle ball or tennis baseball. and mom would come out and yell, "Hey, dinner time." And those kids would much rather keep playing their wiffle ball game in the backyard than come to dinner. They come to dinner when it was dark at, 9 p.m. So I can relate. Those were great times with neighborhood kids.
Absolutely. How many years have you been at Weber now?
So this will be I'm starting my 11th. Yep, 11th year. Start my 20th overall in education, and this will be I just finished 4 as the athletic director. So starting 5 and 11 here at Weber High. So the longest place I've been in my
And let
20s.
me ask you, since we're talking about that, I'll move one of my later questions up till now. So what's it like being at Weber, a very successful athletic school, and replacing the legend Ted Peterson? Talk about
Yeah.
that for me.
Holy cow, Ted. So I worked with Ted well, obviously he was part of hiring me. I came to Weber in 2014-15 school year to be the head baseball coach. And then I taught math and PE for, kind of A day, B day sort of thing. And moved into full-time PE for a couple years after that. But I worked with Ted as the baseball coach, very supportive. And then I was kind of an assistant AD, had an extra prep period every day to kind of help with the fields and gym scheduling, different things, and would fill in for him when he needed. But I learned a lot from Ted. Like he's a great guy. Like loves life. The small things he just don't sweat the small stuff. He just wants to be happy and enjoy life, and great integrity, hard worker. But I learned a lot from him just on how he kind of went about his business. Just didn't let the small things bug him. That's the thing probably I admired about him the most, honestly. He didn't let things bug him.
I'm wondering, because Ted is such a legend at the school and obviously in the UIAAA, do people look at you sometimes and give you that, well, Ted wouldn't do it that way, or maybe you don't find that? Talk about that if you would.
Yeah, well, sometimes, yeah, the older generation of people that know him, because I think Ted was here. I mean, I think he was here 30 years at Weber High. I can't remember where he was when he first started, but it was down, I think, in northern Arizona at a small school. Came up here, and I don't know how long he was the AD, but it was several years. And I don't know if it's because my first year was COVID in 2020, and so I didn't really, have a choice in how we did things because of all the policies and protocols. And it was kind of like, well, the state says this, the district says this, the school, we got to follow this stuff. So I don't think there was really a chance to be like, well, Ted did this, and why are you doing this? It was not a lot of my choice, right? But I still do have a lot of people that come through and ask about Ted and, what he did, and how he's doing now and those things. But yeah, certainly we're different, like everybody is. We do things differently, but he had a way to relate to people and make them feel, a part of the thing.
Thanks so much for sharing that. Let's have you talk for a minute, Trevor, about some of the mentors you had in your life, coaches, teachers, that made a difference for you.
Yeah, the list is long. I mean, I can start with my dad. Obviously, he was in education for 45 years, which is crazy to me. He did, like I said, 7 years or 6 years at junior highs that fed to Ben Lomond High School, 28 years more at Ben Lomond, retired, and then did 11 more at Snowcrest Junior High just as a teacher. Coached a little bit of junior high baseball over there, kind of helped him out. But 11 more there, 45 years. So he was always someone I looked up to. I mean, as a small kid, I mean, I remember as early as I could bounce a ball or throw a ball or hit a ball, I wanted to be at the games. I wanted to be at practice there at Ben Lomond, where we coached for a long time. Like I said earlier, ride the bus, be in the dugout, get to know the play. I idolized those high school kids like crazy. And I just watched his competitive energy and his passion for the game. He was a baseball coach for a long time. He did baseball and football simultaneously for probably 3 or 4 years, and then was a sophomore basketball coach with Coach Evan Exel, who's actually another one of my mentors, right? Evan was the head at the UHSAA, right? So unfortunately, he was the head basketball coach for a long time, won a state championship in '86. I still remember everything about that game. With Kurt Miller and Larry Kane and Eddie Green and so forth. but my sophomore year, Evan was the head coach, and then my junior year is when he went down to the UHSA. So I missed him being my coach my last 2 years there at Ben Lomond. But he was a great mentor too. Respected him a ton. My dad, their family and our family were really close. Clyde Moore is another one. Clyde Moore is actually one of the assistant superintendents now in our school district here at Weber School District. My first coaching job was with him at Ben Lomond when I returned from my mission. He was the head coach. I think that was from, well, he was the coach probably 98, somewhere in there, to about 2008, 10 years or so. And I started with him in 02 after my mission until 05, or 01, sorry. So 5 years with him. And I learned a ton of, a lot of my basketball background and knowledge actually comes from him, and a guy named Tim Doolin that helped him as well. He was a great mentor. More recently, kind of in my professional life, I'd say Bryce Balloff. He was a lot AD at Fremont. You probably remember Bryce, and
Right.
he ended his tenure as a AD at Fremont and came to Weber as an intern principal. Ended up being here at Weber for 6 years, and he was a huge part of the transition from when Ted retired through that COVID mess we all dealt with for a year, 2 years, right? Plus, right? 2021. And he had been an AD, he had been a coach. He ended up being here 6 years, which is pretty uncommon. Then he finished his last year at Roy High School before he retired. And I still stay in contact with them. And all these guys, I consider friends now. And Mark Hansen was also a mentor. He's actually a teacher here at Weber High, and he was on that staff with Clyde Moore at Ben Lomond. And so, yeah, it's awesome. There's so many connections and relationships. Sorry about that. The light went there. So many relationships we build in the coaching world.
That's awesome. You mentioned, because I was obviously teaching and a young AD back in the Kurt Miller days. And back when I first knew Evan, I'm trying to think. So that's obviously probably the most famous Ben Lomond person I know, except maybe Jerry Bovee. Was Jerry older than Kurt, or was he younger?
Jerry was I think Jerry was 2 years older than Kurt. So Kurt, they actually won the championship, I think, in the 85-86 season, and then the 86-87 season. Kurt was a senior, and all those other guys were. So Kurt was a junior when they won it, and those other kids, Gerald Broad, Sean Plow, were all seniors. They beat a really good Timpview team, 85-82, down there at the Huntsman Center. And that was before no 3-point line, and it was 85-82 in high school. I mean, it was insane shootout. Those guys from Timpview could flat out shoot it, and Ben Lomond would just run the ball up and down and shoot layups and things. And then the next year, 86-87, Kurt was a senior, but all those other kids that were now seniors with him, hadn't had much experience the year before. But they lost to Provo in the state championship. The Santiago kid was on that Provo team, could score like crazy. So anyway, Jerry Bovee, also a great family friend. Probably one of my dad's favorite kids I call him a kid, right? At that time for my dad, one of my dad's favorite kids he coached at Ben Lomond. And so Jerry graduated in 85, and he was the center on a state final football team at Ben Lomond the 84-85 year. He was a center at his size. And so I remember going down there at the old Rice Stadium with that, the turf that was like cement. I can't remember, just the old Astro turf, and West High School.
With the track field around it still.
Yeah. And West beat Ben Lomond in that game. I can't remember the names of those kids, but I was only 7 or 8 at the time, but they had a couple good running backs. And anyway, West beat Ben Lomond in that state championship in football, the 3A at that time when we only had 4A. So
that is awesome. Let me ask you a personal question, Trevor.
Yeah.
What's your biggest failure or disappointment in life, and what did you learn from it?
Oh, I would say, like, specifically with like coaching, I think as a young coach, just less is more. Like, too much time away from family, I think I'm a workaholic by nature and want to get things done and want to, as coaches, we want to be prepared, but I think there's a time we can shut it off. One of my biggest failures or weaknesses, if you will, is not shutting it off when I go home when I'm coaching. and when I'm doing this job, because the mind never shuts down. And I think as I've gotten older, have kids that have gotten older, things can wait, things can get done tomorrow. We still want to work and be prepared, but I think being so tunnel vision about X's and O's and instead of like the relationship part of it early is something that I've learned and could probably do a better job if I were to do it over again.
Sure. Talk about the job of being an athletic director and talk about how it's different. Well, talk about how it's different since COVID. Talk about how it's different since you first became an assistant for Ted, and talk about how it's different, or at least how you viewed it back when you were a kid and your dad was the AD.
Yeah, I mean, holy cow. I've had some conversation with my dad about it. I mean, they didn't even have Register My Athlete, or I don't think Arbiter, or all the tools. Obviously, the technology is way more advanced, and those tools are available. The job, it's kind of like being a head coach or as an assistant coach, and then you want to be a head coach. And you're like, oh, that doesn't look too bad. I mean, come on, how hard can it be, right? I see this guy every day. I see what he's doing. I mean, he's just hanging out, cruising around on the Kubota or whatever it is, and going to a practice here or there and attending a game. But until you get in that seat, in those shoes, just like I experienced as a head coach, it's a whole different world. You're like, wow, this is way more. There's way more to it than I thought. It's changed since I've been in, like I said, the 2020 summer. So like when COVID, came out in March and school was, shut down, all that whole thing we all dealt with. So I essentially took the job in June. So that whole next fall with football and all the protocols and the mask wearing and the distancing and the testing and constantly, giving new information to the coaches about what they can and can't do at practice and bus rides and social distancing and seating charts on buses and all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, that seemed like that was the job. I'm like, this is the job, you know? But I would say, just in the 4 years I've been doing, I mean, I think we've added 5 sports. I mean, I would say that's probably the biggest change. We've added boys and girls lacrosse, girls wrestling, right? Cheer, competitive cheer, and now boys volleyball. I think, so we went from 20 to 25 in, less than in 4 years. And so it just gets to be more coaches you're mentoring and teaching. And, the turnover rate with high school coaches is high, right? It's hard to find good coaches and good coaches to stay. It seems like that across the board. So I'd say those are some of the changes and challenges that we deal with.
Let me ask you this. You have a different perspective having grown up with your dad as an AD. I'm interested I want to know how you became involved in the UIAAA, but in addition to that, did you know about the UIAAA from your dad, or was it basically Ted who got you, because obviously he's a past president of our group?
Yeah.
Or did they just tell you, hey, you have to be a member because you're the AD now?
Yeah, it's good. So the logo that's behind you, right? That famous UI, I mean, you can see that logo you recognize it from a mile away. My dad, I don't know, this is sad that I don't know this, but one of the meetings I went down to the UHSA offices when I first became, and I knew he was in it, but he's got a plaque on the wall in there. My dad he was inducted into, whatever it was in, back in the maybe 2000, 2005 range. I don't know.
Right.
And so, I told him, I said, hey, I saw your plaque. I took a picture of it and sent it to him or whatever. So I knew he was a part of it. He, the shirt you've got on with the logo, he's, I think got plenty of those. And I asked him, what does UIAAA mean? What are all those A's for? Right. And so he was kind of the first intro to it. And, he in fact gave me some old manuals from some LTI courses and different things, and had some spreadsheets and some documents of, kind of outdated, but the material, I mean, the ideas aren't, but maybe the presentation of it is. But then Ted and Bryce were real big. So when I became the assistant, Ted right away, he signed me up as an assistant. So I was involved in it 2 years previous to becoming the head athletic director, right? And just told me the importance of attending the classes and becoming certified, attending the conferences and different things. And then, Bryce Balliff, I was talking to you about earlier, is he and I, in fact, in 2019, December, so we're talking, 3 months before COVID, we went to, I think it was in National Harbor, like DC area, right? I believe
Yes,
2019. So he
absolutely.
and I went together. I was, hoping to be the AD. We knew Ted was retiring. And so they sent me and him out there, and that was like eye-opening to me. I couldn't write fast enough and take, notes fast enough, and was just so impressed with the leadership there and just the things, the knowledge that they had to share, and just the best practices for, the day-to-day job, and was able to mingle and collaborate with a lot of guys across the nation, and even, outside of the US. So that was awesome. So I'd say those three guys were critical in getting me involved there.
Yes, I'm smiling. And of course, the audio people can't see that, but I remember the last conference in National Harbor, and I remember I'm trying to think where we had a dinner offsite with all the UIAAA people.
Yeah, I remember attending.
Yeah,
it was because it seemed like that place was all walking distance right there from the hotel, just down there, small little town, right? And
yeah,
can't remember the name of it, but I know there was a good chunk of us there.
yes, it was, and that's let me have you talk about that for a minute. I know it's not one of the questions I sent you, but
yeah,
we have found that once we get people to the national conference, they pretty well tell their principals they need to get back. So that was your first one. Talk a little bit about that for our audience.
Oh yeah, like I haven't missed since, and well, the only ones I've missed is when they had to go virtual, right, during COVID. Was it 2 years? I can't remember. Maybe
just
two,
the one.
or just the one. Okay.
It was virtual in Tampa, and then we had Denver, but we still had to wear masks.
Yes, I went to Denver,
and then we had Nashville, which
Nashville.
was really the first one without the mask, and then Orlando last year.
I did Orlando, so I've been to all of them since, and so yeah, so critical. We came back. In fact, we got a district AD, if you will. Matt Williams is over athletics here in our school district that now has 5 schools, with Westfield joining. Clyde Moore, who I talked to about previously as one of my mentors, and now in our district superintendency, he was in a job before that. He was where Matt was, so kind of over athletics in our district. And it was kind of him that said, all right, we want you guys to go after we come back with information, and like, this is just a no-brainer. We've got it. There's no good reason to not attend this as ADs and come back and share with our coaches and our athletes and parents and so forth. And then he came up with, so basically our district sends us every other year as far as like paying for it, and then our school does it the other every other year. And so it's on, already scheduled for Austin in December. And just hearing experiences from different ADs and how they do things differently or similarly is a lot of what I'm able to share and kind of instill here. In fact, I remember with Bryce in National Harbor, it's just he and I. I mean, I don't even know if anybody else from our district went at the time. And we're just in the hotel room or in the lobby, or we're just bouncing ideas off each other. And we're like, what is Weber High athletics all about? And we didn't know. Like, if you asked a coach, if you asked a athlete, what are we? And so that, we went to some of those classes and workshops about culture and about core principles and different things. So we were able to kind of brainstorm, bring some stuff back, and we instilled what we call the warrior mindset now. And we did that the summer of 2020. We were on a meeting over Zoom with all the coaches and masks and all that stuff, right? And we're able to come up with a thing we're 5 years going with that, and it's a thing that we're proud of, that all of our coaches at that time were very integral in coming up with that and kind of being unified as an athletic department. So that was huge.
And so let me ask you a follow-up, because you were in Nashville, which was the largest one ever, and this last year in Orlando, the second largest one, even with that big rainstorm we had down there.
Yeah.
So just compare, in the short time you've attended national conferences, and let me throw this in. Your school and district does it right. If I could get every school and district to do that for the ADs, that would be great. But the question is it just, can you see how much bigger it's gotten since you first went?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, you just get a feel for it when you walk in the opening keynote speaker, the big ballrooms or whatever, there's just, you look in there and you're like, there's this many people here and it's packed. I mean, that alone is reason to go to those things, to hear those John Gordon, for crying out loud. I mean, how
Yeah.
often you get to listen to that guy, right? And some others, if I were to think about all the great, speakers, I mean, Lee Green was unbelievable, right? When he was in there and talking about, the law side of it and whatnot. And so, it's just, yeah, it's an honor to be a part of that. And I just think as a coach, as a leader, as an AD, if we're not constantly trying to get better and we're just thinking we've got all the answers and we become complacent, that I think that's when you run into trouble. Just being a lifelong learner and open to things that could potentially help, our programs here at Weber.
Thanks for sharing that insight.
Yeah.
What's the favorite part of your job, Trevor?
Oh, my favorite part. The coaches, we really just building relationships with our coaches. We hire great people here. Now it's hard to find great coaches and great people just because, for all the reasons we could list, the lack of pay and the time and dealing with the struggles with parents and kids and playing time and all those things, right? But seeing coaches put in the time and effort and seeing them build relationships with their kids and their teams and being able to see progress from, day one to, the last day or whatever it is, and then to work with them in the off season and meet with them regularly. So I love the coaches that we work with here at Weber that I have. And the kids, I mean, like we talked earlier, right? Like I'm a baseball, basketball, football guy. I mean, I had never been to a swim meet before I became the AD. Been to a swimming pool, of course, but not to a high school swim meet. Drill and cheer, I know nothing about, obviously, right? Soccer, I'm not a big, I played when I was younger. I don't understand the game. Volleyball, I could never coach those sports because of my lack of knowledge, but I love going to those games and seeing, because it's the big time for those kids and those coaches, even though it might not be my favorite sport, it's their big time. And so, I try to pride myself in attending, down at BYU. I go to the swim meets every year, the state meet. I'll go down to UVU to wrestling and, cheer and driller down there. And try to just go to a golf match. I mean, a high school golf match, where there's very few people attending, the kids' parents following them, right? Or a tennis match. I mean, the first tennis match I went to as an AD in 2020, the fall of 2020 for the girls. I asked Coach Caitlin, still our coach, I'm like, where's the officials at? Where's the referees here? And I couldn't believe that they were just on their honor to call the ball in and out. And so I learned things on the fly there. But yeah, I just love the kids and the coaches that I work with.
What's one common myth about being an athletic director that you'd like to debunk, Trevor?
Oh, I would say, at least here, I think it's pretty common in Utah. Like I don't hire and fire.
Yes.
Right? Like the AD, we get maybe some credit we don't deserve and maybe some criticism we don't deserve. I mean, that's with coaches too and administrators. Certainly, hopefully my insight and opinion, matters when we're hiring coaches and finding. But, I think, at the college level, the AD is calling the shots. They're hiring and firing and whatever. But, at the high school level, the principal is doing that. Another one I would say definitely is we don't just hang out in our office all day long, right? We're just hanging out behind the computer, watching TV and checking out the internet, checking out ESPN and whatnot. But the job is a lot more hours than I thought it would be, and I still would have got into it even now. I mean, a 40-hour work week for a teacher. If you're a coach, you're adding, a couple, 2-3 a day, maybe more with planning. But as an AD, sometimes our day starts when school ends. All the teachers are going home. And that's when our day, we're only halfway through, right? We're here at school and then here till 11 o'clock at night on a home football game and basketball games twice a week late. And, I try to attend, road games for those sports and stuff. So yeah, those are probably a couple. I'd say that, a myth is that we're always available and always ready to respond right this second. I mean, you talk about one guy or one person that has 25 sports, 7, 8, 9 of them per season. But as well as I do that, everything's year round. So in the fall, I mean, basketball's going on too, right? Baseball. So we're still working with coaches. We're still making sure we, follow proper protocol, procedures, different things, and trying to build those guys year round too. So very, very busy job.
That's excellent. Let me finish up with a couple of questions. The first one being this, Trevor. You've got two suggestions for a brand new AD, and they need to follow Trevor's suggestions in order to become a success. What would your two suggestions be?
Two suggestions. One, I think like get a mentor. Like I mentioned earlier, like super blessed to have a mentor as Ted train me and help me with some things, obviously as the AD. And I call myself an assistant. Our district doesn't really have that as a job title. They gave me an extra prep. So I had two preps one day and one the other. So that was kind of focused on doing athletic director duties, right? And then Bryce Balliff, that was an AD for 10 years, was a principal. He was obviously the principal over athletics. So I learned a ton from him. Get a mentor, right? I was lucky enough to have it in the building. I mean, someone's a new AD that just comes in and doesn't have connections with maybe the former one or whatever, I would say reach out. I've had a great opportunity to work with Mike Russell a ton since he's become a Westfield. I mean, he became the AD a year ago, trying to plan for a new school that's going to open in August.
Right.
Now he's been an AD before at Bonneville, and when I was a coach at Bonneville, we were really good friends. But like you said earlier, stuff has changed so much. So we've communicated all year long, and I'm not claiming to be his mentor because he was an AD before me, but he took that break from AD stuff and went and coached at the Snow Women's College basketball program, I think for 5 or 6 years. But when he came back, stuff's different. And so I would say our profession, we're all willing to help one another, whether you're in the same school district, same region, in the state. That's huge. Get a mentor. Number two, I would say, just be yourself. Like, don't try to, like, if you try to do everything and try to be like everyone, like, you're going to overwhelm yourself. And take one thing from a conference or one thing from a class to implement, and be yourself, be true to who you are, work hard, work with integrity and good values. And, you won't go wrong that way, is what I would say.
Great suggestions. Thanks for bringing up Mike Russell. I think he was on the podcast probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. Probably by the time this airs, it'll probably be 2 months ago.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, Mike's great. Great guy, great coach, great human. He'll be a great AD over there.
Well, and another one, because his dad obviously hung out with your dad. And Dave Norquist, all that little trio of guys.
Absolutely. The Belmo and Ogden days, all those guys. Yeah, I mean, funny story, funny kind of side story. When I coached after my mission at Ben Lomond, the basketball with Clyde, I did some baseball with Mark Hansen too for a couple of years while I was going to Weber State, going to college there. That coaching group of Evan and Gene Coons and Clyde Moore and Tim Doolin and Mark Hansen, Phil Russell, Dave North, all those guys, they'd go golfing every Tuesday, all summer long. They would, everybody would just take a turn. Tuesday, if it was, my dad's turn, he'd pick a course, we'd all meet there. And so I was very young, 21, 22, and I got to go with them, and I had a great time. But Phil is, man, as good as it gets, and that was unfortunate that he, passed away with the COVID.
Right.
But yeah, what a I mean, that guy's a legend. Talk about a legend. So
we'll finish with this. Trevor, what questions should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
I think you covered everything that's been like important to me, honestly, or maybe an AD would feel important to hear. I just think the time commitment to this job, right, is huge. I mean, we're in the summer, we're essentially on call all the time. And like I talked about earlier, like you try to shut it off at home, and maybe family dinner doesn't exist very often at my house, probably because I've got kids in sports and my wife coaches and teaches at the junior high, and I'm here. And it's just, you try to compartmentalize and try to take calls when you need to, but there's certain times, and I want coaches to know that if they need to call me or they text me or email and they need something now, like, I'm here to help them, right? Especially new coaches. I mean, we've got so many new coaches here. We had Bill Cruff was a swim coach here for 29 years. So we had to replace him a couple years ago. Corey Woodland's a golf coach that's going to be done shortly for 20. And then after that, it's me at 10. And then, we're talking the rest of the 20 sports, it's like 5 years and below. So we want to mentor them, help them, be a resource and a support for them. But I want coaches to know that I'm available, and I'll get to them as soon as I can. And if it needs to be now, it'll be now to help them.
Great advice. On that note, that wraps up this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Again, our special guest today has been Trevor Howell, Director of Athletics at Weber High School. Trevor, thanks for being on the podcast.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks a lot for having me.
For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.